so Andrew Tate. So one of the chapters, the chapter on Andrew Tate, starts with a friend of mine talking about a Christmas that was ruined by a 15-year-old nephew who on Christmas Day was making it very clear he was a fan of Andrew Tate and upsetting all the women around the table to the point that 2 of them had to leave before pudding, which is obviously a very big deal. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Well, hang on, was it Christmas cake? Then I understand. Yeah.
It was it's a bit heavy, right? They were probably full.
Sorry.
But also the sexism was bad. Yeah. And afterwards, the grown-ups were kind of like trying to work out how their son had grown up to be this right-wing, Andrew Tate misogynist fan. And I was like, well, I know why he became a fan of Andrew Tate. Your friends are good, liberal, feminist, left-wing, Guardian-reading people, aren't they? And they, yes. Well, that's why, because has he grown up in a house where he's just always heard things like typical men?
Yeah.
You know, that's the patriarchy, like kind of toxic masculinity. Like, would he have heard anything positive about masculinity or being a boy? And they were like, oh shit, no. Because the thing is that, like, for our generation of fathers, this recent burst of feminism feels like such a small and recent corrective to 10,000 years of patriarchy and Benny Hill chasing sexy schoolgirls around a tree, that we don't realise that an entire generation of boys have grown up in this time where there just hasn't been any positive talk about being a boy. There hasn't been this kind of joyful, and we just have got used to saying typical men, like kind of unthinkingly, because we think they can take it. But for a 15-year-old boy, he doesn't know the context of, you know, patriarchy and women not having the vote and all this stuff. He just knows for all of his lifetime there's been a feminist club at school and that girls are walking around feeling confident and that no one has said anything positive about men until Andrew Tate turns up and goes, no, masculinity is incredible. The more extreme your masculinity, the more incredible it is. I will give you confidence. I will give you things to say. I will provide you with a brotherhood. And that's incredibly intoxicating.
Mm. It's also terrifying. Are we simply just too late?
Well, it's been interesting. So the last 2 gigs that I've done, the people who've come up to me and talked to me at the signings are fascinating because, like, you know, when you're writing a book, you're just on your own, usually in your pants, just eating sardines out of a can and muttering to yourself and just sort of going, I think I'm onto something, but I don't know if I am. I think I'm onto something. And so just meeting people in the last 2 days and talking about this, the amount of people in the queues afterwards who are either in education or in child support services, who are talking about how huge this phenomenon with Andrew Tate is. Every single one of them were at schools where they'd had to gather the staff together and talk about how to cope with him.
God.
Because you're getting boys in class shouting out his catchphrases. You're getting boys who are marking their homework that they're handing into female teachers with MMAS, make me a sandwich. Like, women should be in the kitchen making sandwiches. You should not be teaching me. Male teachers being asked, would you let your wife go out on her own? And they are literally having assemblies disrupted. The boys' educations are being disrupted because they are being so disruptive as an influence of Andrew Tate. Interestingly, from talking to these people who work in education, they're saying what I had observed as well, which is by the time the kids get to sort of 16, 17, they seem to have grown out of him. Mm. And he then becomes a byword with the bigger boys for, oh, he's a bit of a dick, or you're acting a bit Andrew Tate, and then that becomes a cuss. But for those really vital years when boys are really lost between about 11 and 14, it genuinely, every single, not just at the events that I've done, but people on social media were like, yeah, in every single school that we work in, we are having to have meetings about this one man. That's such a huge amount of time and resources that are being put into counteracting something that one man is doing online. It's shocking.
Is there an antidote out there? Is there the opposite of Andrew Tate that we can look to?
Well, this is, so I spoke to a great many people who work in support services with boys and stuff, and I found this amazing man called Josh Spears, who works primarily with white working class boys. He was specialised in going into schools and basically trying to detoxify them and start conversations about Andrew Tate. And in the book, he goes through this whole, he was like, if you confront young boys and basically go, you chose a bad role model, just stop it, they're going to double down on it. You have to have conversations where you allow people off ramps.
Yeah.
So he starts his conversation by saying that he once had a really big hero too, that he absolutely worshipped, and his hero was Kevin Spacey. And as the years went on, he learnt that Kevin Spacey was a bad man. And he said, I realised that I had a choice at that moment. I could either decide not to believe what people said and double down on my fandom, or I could do what you need to do as an adult. And I could admit that one of my heroes had let me down And that's a heartbreaking thing to do, but it also makes you stronger. And that's one of the ways you become an adult, because you will time and time again choose heroes who will let you down. And he was saying that by this point, there was like, you could hear a pin drop in the classrooms. The boys are going, oh, okay, hadn't even occurred to me that you might grow out of heroes, or you could choose a bad one. And then he would start talking about positive role models. And then when I started researching positive role models, so I was typing in things like most loved men in the world. I was trying to find really positive role models. First of all, I had to go through about 20 pages to find it, because when you look for most loved men in the world, Google thinks that you mean most powerful men in the world, which in itself is very telling.
Yeah.
And then when we finally got to that list, it was people like Marcus Rashford and Michael Palin and David Attenborough and Keanu Reeves. And it was just realizing that we do have these amazing role models out there, and just talking to boys about these role models. We just basically need to have role model classes and make it fun. Like, young people love being given a choice. Like, you know, when I was a kid, when the Argos catalogue turned up, or the K's catalogue, you'd be like, when I grow up, I'll have that kettle. And
and did you get that kettle?
I got that kettle.
Well done.
And you need to do, you know, we really do. And we've been so good with girls for this. Every girl's bedroom wall that I know in their teenage years is covered with pictures of their heroes. They make a god wall, and that you become an amalgam of all these people on your wall. And like, we just don't have the kind of variety on our boys' bedroom walls that we do on our girls' bedroom walls, and we just need to have a catalogue of inspiration. Like, and you see it again. This is a cultural thing. You know, you cannot move for features that are called 50 Young Women That Are Changing the World Right Now, or books that are 100 kick-ass women from history. We've become very good at giving our girls amazing role models.
But also imagine now a mainstream media outlet writing a list of the 50 most amazing men.
Right.
Everyone would be so angry.
Totally. But that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm really aware that, like, on the 3 or 4 occasions where I've said straight white man tonight, that in itself sounds problematic. Usually when you hear the phrase straight white man, it's someone's about to say something racist or sexist or homophobic. But if you cannot describe the category that you come from, if simply saying who you are sounds problematic, that's why boys are scared, and that's why boys are angry. Because if you are fundamentally ashamed or made to feel guilty for who you are, even though you haven't done anything, that's, you know, I feel that the phrase straight white man now is like the phrase fat girl when I was a fat girl when I was 16.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
Now we live in a world of Lizzo, and you can say, I'm one of the big girls. Like, kind of, you can just talk about being a big girl. But now there's the same stigma, and simultaneously, the point where I started writing this book, I realized that when I started writing How to Be a Woman, it was at a time where I hadn't heard anyone speaking kindly to women for a decade. We were at peak Britney, peak kind of Amy Winehouse. Like, the tone everywhere was very much, women, sort your minges out and buy a handbag. It was very unkind. And I wanted to write something that was friendly and supportive. And I've realized that the tone that we talk about men and boys in now, very often, is that same level of unkindness that we were using for women and girls 15 years ago.